The Lorcana meta has pretty much stabilized into 4 decks right now. And what I'm going to do today is look at one of those decks in detail, the Emerald Sapphire Control deck. Now this deck goes by a couple different names. You might see Baja Blast, Stacks, Bend to My Cow, but essentially what you have is Emerald Sapphire Ramp Control. It has a pretty good matchup into Blurple, which is kind of the top dog right now, and oddly enough, a very good matchup into Amber Steel, which is an aggro deck, and normally Control struggles against aggro, but this deck with early access to Under the Sea has been doing fairly well. Your biggest problem is probably going to be Purple Steel, dealing with that. So what I'm going to do today is look at the deck that I've been having some really good success with, kind of show you how it works, and then talk about some different tech options you can include. So in the 1 slot, this is an auto include. You need to have 4 copies of the 1 cost Clarabelle Clumsy Guest. This sets up your shift target down the road. Every Emerald Sapphire deck you see is going to be running 4 of these. Some other cards you might consider in that 1 slot would be Basil with the support, although you see that more in the Blurple decks, and the Bobbies and Maruski with the ability to kind of filter through your cards and look for what you need, whether it be the Clarabelle or the Shift Clarabelle, or maybe some removal. But when you see these decks, you're going to see 4 copies of the Clarabelle, and then you might see the Basil, might see the Bobby, and then the other 1 cost I'm running is 4 copies of Develop Your Brain. Just the ability to look through your deck to find what you need. Sometimes you find the big Clarabelle, but not the little one to shift it onto, or vice versa. Sometimes you really just need Under the Sea or a Mother Knows Best to get rid of something. So just being able to look for something that you need is helpful. And it pairs really well with Sail the Azurite Sea. When you can ramp on 2, you'll still have 1 ink left, and you can play Develop Your Brain or a 1 cost character if you'd like. We have 2 cards in the 2 slot. Again, these are both auto includes 4 ofs. Every deck you see like this is going to be running 4 of each of these. You have Tipo Growing Sun and Sail the Azurite Sea. Both do essentially the same thing, but in different ways for different reasons. So looking at Tipo first, what he does is he allows you to put a card from your hand into your inkwell. You don't have to show your opponent, so it can be uninkable. So sometimes in the past it was really nice because if you knew a Ursula Deceiver was coming, you could get rid of a song that they were going to take. You don't see too many Ursula Deceivers right now, so that's not as important, but why he's really nice right now in this current meta is that when you get that big Clarabelle out, she's not big enough to sing Under the Sea by herself, so having Tipo out allows her to sing it on turn with 5 ink on turn 4. So that's really nice to have him on the board sometimes. He's also a really good shift target for the Baymax that shifts onto anything with the universal shift. With Sail the Azurite Sea, you also get to ink an additional card, but it has to be inkable and you have to show your opponent. But with Sail the Azurite Sea, you get to draw a card. So Tipo's better into a lot of aggro matchups where either you want some board control just to have a body on the board, or you want another character to sing Under the Sea. Sail the Azurite Sea is better into a lot of control decks where you know it's going to be a long game and you want the card draw. In the 3 slot, we have Clarabelle Contented Wallflower. This is an auto include 4 of. You're going to see this in all the decks. It's really great to establish a singer. They can sing Mother Knows Best. She draws a card, which is really nice, but then having another shift target available. Sometimes when you're playing against some steel decks or maybe Amethyst, you want to have 2 options to shift your Clarabelle onto because they can either fire the cannons, they can Strength of a Raging Fire, they can Elsa one of your Clarabelles. So having 2 down, it's usually impossible to deal with both of them before you can shift with 5 ink. The other 3 cost character that I'm running is Pleakley, the Scientific Expert. This is a new addition for me. But what he does is he allows you, when you play him, you put one of your characters into your inkwell, Exerted. So first thing I'd say is, because I see a lot of people miss this, is when you do that, make sure you quest with your character before you add them. You don't have to do it before you quest. So if I have a Tipo and I'm playing Pleakley to add him to my inkwell, I want to quest with that Tipo before I add him to the inkwell. Make sure you do that. A lot of people, and myself included, have been running the Donald in this slot, the 5 cost Donald that puts a card from your inkwell I'm sorry, from your deck into your inkwell when you play him. And he is a good card and definitely one to consider instead of Pleakley. Why I like Pleakley a little bit better is your curve in this deck is, Clarabelle on 1, Ramp on 2, and you still can't play that Donald on turn 3, but you can play Pleakley, so you'll get to the 5 ink with him. In the 4 slot, we have 4 copies of Donald Duck Perfect Gentleman. Now this is an interesting card because it allows you to draw an extra card every turn, but it also draws your opponent a card every turn. So it's great when you don't have access to that Clarabelle. He's kind of your plan B for card draw. But why he works in this deck is for this deck, you generally want your opponent to have a large amount of cards, because with Clarabelle, the more cards they have, the more cards you draw at the end of your turn. So he kind of works both ways. He draws you cards, he draws them cards, and then you take advantage of the fact that they have a lot of cards. He's kind of hard to deal with the 5 willpower as well, and quests for 2. Then to keep our uninkable count low, we're running 2 copies of Scrooge McDuck, the aficionado of antiquities. And you'll see some people are running Scrooge, some people are running the 6-cost uninkable Baymax. It really just comes down to we don't want to have too many uninkables in this deck, and they both do the same thing. Baymax is 6 cost but shifts on 4, so it kind of takes the spot of this Scrooge. If you put both in, that's a little bit greedy and you might end up breaking a lot, so I can see it going either way. I've been running the Scrooge. I've just had some success with him, but I'd try out the Baymax as well, being able to shift him onto a little Clarabelle if you don't have the big one yet, or onto your Tipo or any other smaller character. That's pretty nice and very hard to deal with. We don't have any characters in the 5 slot, but for 6, we have John Silver, Alien Pirate. Now, this card's been around since set 1, kind of finds little niches to plug into every once in a while, but very good card. So when you play it and whenever he quests, you can give a chosen opposing character Reckless, which is really nice. They can't quest. So we're only running 3 copies of him. You see him in all these decks, but you'll see different numbers of him. But 3 for me seems to be the right amount to have. Very safe ink early on, right? You don't need him till later on in the game, so if you get him early, you can ink him. Quest for 2, great stats, very good card. In the 7, we have Basil, Undercover Detective. You're pretty much going to see 4 of these in every single deck. He's got 2 great abilities. The first is when you play him, you can send an opposing character back to their hand, and whenever he quests, they discard a random card. Both of those abilities are great. Quest for 2, pretty good stats. He's a little expensive, but once you get up to 7, he's a great card to play. And then every single deck you see like this is going to be running 4 copies, obviously, of Clarabelle Light on her hoofs. This is your main draw engine. So when you play her, at the end of your turn, you can draw cards equal to however many cards your opponent has. What's great about Clarabelle is it's impossible to miss. Your opponent can't mess it up, right? Because it takes effect at the end of your turn. So you can play her and then draw the cards. There's nothing your opponent can do about it. She quests for 2, has obnoxious stats, right? With 5, 6, very hard to deal with. So she's going to be kind of the MVP of your deck, the main card of your deck, your draw engine. You want to be careful when you quest her, because if she gets taken out, it's really hard to recover from that. Or if they play Hades on her, it doesn't feel great. So just be careful with her, be mindful of things like that. But you're going to want to get her down pretty early on. Kind of the gameplay for this deck is something on 1, ramp on 2, get to 5 as fast as you can, and put Clarabelle down. Now, I am not running this card. I've thought about it, and I might at some point, but Hades Infernal Schemer is another great one to consider. The ability to play a character and send an opposing character to the inkwell is really nice. What I find with this control deck, when I get to 7 ink, there's usually a lot of opposing characters on the field, and being able to take out one of them generally doesn't help me too much. So I find Under the Sea to be much better at that point of the game. And then the 7 cost, uninkable. I want to keep my uninkables low. So he just didn't have the impact that he would in a Blurple deck, where I have some more early game control than I do in this deck. So I have opted not to play him, but you will see him in a lot of these decks. In the 1 slot, again, develop your brain. You play it, you look at the top 2 cards, put one in your hand and one at the bottom of your deck. Very good for finding your missing piece, whatever that may be. Clarabelle, big Clarabelle, little Clarabelle. Maybe you need ramp on 2. Maybe you're looking for Under the Sea, whatever it is. Great scrying card. Sail the Azurite Sea. Again, we already talked about that. Ramp on 2 draws you an extra card. Vision of the Future. This is one you won't see in all decks, but I really just like the ability to play this and look at the top 5 cards and find what I need. It's like develop your brain, but on a larger scale. I get to look at the top 5 cards. So it's really just to scry through your deck and find that missing piece. And with the large amount of ink that we're going to get to in this deck, we have 2 extra ink, right, to play it and find what we need. Bend to My Will is a very expensive uninkable card, and I'm only running one of them. But when you play it, your opponent discards their entire hand, which can be backbreaking in these games. Now, I will say I don't find it as efficient and as effective as it was in the last set, because in this current meta, I'm either going to be playing Amber Steel aggro, and they've already dumped their hand anyways by the time I'm at 7 ink, or I'm playing some Amethyst variation where they have a Dumbo out that can just draw a billion cards anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I discard their hand. I do keep one just in case. It's pretty good in the mirror and against some more control decks, but if you're playing against an Amber Steel aggro, you might want to TPO this away and just put it into your inkwell, because their hand's going to be empty by the time you can play it anyways. You're going to see 4 copies in just about every deck like this of Mother Knows Best. The card has been around since set 1. At first, it was kind of seen as a negative that you bounce a character back to their hand, because you didn't banish it, they can just play it again next turn. But with this Clarabelle build, it takes that negative and turns it into a positive. For every card in their hand, you get to draw another card. So when you bounce it back, it becomes a good thing for you instead of a negative. You do want to be careful what you bounce back. You don't want to bounce back a Hades. You don't want to bounce back a card that draws a card on play, maybe like Genie, can be kind of dangerous sometimes. So just be careful when and how you play it, but a great early game control card. We have the 4-cost Song, You're Welcome. This was a card that didn't see a lot of play when it first came out, because it essentially is a removal card that draws your opponent 2 cards. But again, with Clarabelle, that negative becomes a positive. What I also really like about this is it can be used on anything, not just characters, but items and locations as well. And you're not seeing a lot of items and locations as well, but if you find yourself against a random Chromicon build or a library comes down, it's nice to have something that can deal with it and not be caught off guard. Sometimes, and a lot of times, you'll use this on your own characters if you're short on cards to draw those 2 extra cards that you need. We're running 3 copies of the 6-cost Heads Held High. This card isn't quite, I would say, in every deck that you're going to see like this, but it's gaining popularity quickly and rising in price rapidly. So what this card does is it lowers every opposing character's attack by 3, which is great, and then you can choose any number of characters and heal 3 damage from them. So it can target every illusion character you're playing against. So if they've got an Iago out, a Raja out, a Palace Guard out, you can just target them with this and they're instantly gone. But when you pair this with Under the Sea, it's pretty much a board wipe. A character would have to be 6 attack to survive this, because it lowers them by 3. I will say, because I forget it all the time, this card can heal your characters too, so don't forget that. When you play it, if you have characters on the board, see if you have any characters you need to heal. And then, of course, 3 copies of the 8-cost uninkable Under the Sea. All opposing characters with 2 or less attack go to the bottom of that player's deck. And when you combine it with Heads Held High, that's pretty much everybody. It's the closest thing we have to B-Prep right now. It's the best board wipe in the game. And with this deck, you can play it pretty much on turn 4 or 5 with the right combination of characters. So that's the build that I'm running. I just like to talk for a minute about mulligan strategy. So with this deck, you want to be very greedy with your mulligan strategy. If you don't find ramp on 2, you better send it all back and try again, because you will most likely lose if you miss ramp on 2. It will not be fun. So if you don't have TPO, if you don't have Sail the Azurite Sea, send it all back and try again. After that, the main thing I'm looking for are my Clarabelle. So I either want the 1-cost or the 3-cost, and then I want the large Clarabelle as well. Other than that, it doesn't really matter. You want to make sure you have some uninkables. You don't want to get stuck with a handful of high-cost uninkables. So sometimes I like to talk about what I call safe ink, right? If I have all the cards I want in my hand, that means I'm going to have to ink one of them on turn 1. So sometimes keeping something like the Basil or the John Silver, Heads Held High, those are what I would call safe ink, right? I can keep one in my hand to ink it on turn 1 if I need to. And then when you're looking at your curve, at your game plan, normally what your plan is going to be is Clarabelle on 1, ramp on 2, that'll get you to 4 ink on turn 3, probably play Pleakley, and then you want to shift that big Clarabelle. That's the main game plan. When you get Clarabelle out, you'll either have Pleakley out or you'll have Tipo out, and you can sing Under the Sea. If you need to, start bouncing things back, start using the You're Welcomes, but that's the main game plan. Clarabelle, ramp, Pleakley, big Clarabelle. If you get that out, that's a pretty good curve. That's pretty hard to answer from the opposing player. So just some things this deck struggles with that you might want to be mindful of. Again, if you miss ramp on 2, it's not going to be a fun game for you. You want to be careful. You do have some high cost uninkable cards, so just be mindful of that in your mulligan. You might want to keep a safe ink card in your hand if possible. I found there are times when I have a small Clarabelle established and it gets taken out either by Strength or Fire the Cannons or Elsa, and then I'm at 5 ink and I can't shift and I have nothing to do. That can be kind of rough, so just try to, if you can get 2 of them down, it's really good. That doesn't always work, but if you can, it's pretty hard for them to answer that. So if you have any questions about this deck, if you're trying to figure it out, let me know. I'm still learning it myself, but I've had a great time with it. And as always, thanks for watching Night in Training. And remember to keep on learning Lorcana one misplay at a time.